So our next speaker, I've had a chance to work with this individual for quite a few years. He's actually been very visionary to me in the area of technology. He worked with the technology giant Microsoft in our community for, I'm not even going to name the years, you can read the profile here. But Gary's also an individual that is very active in our community. How many people are familiar with STEM, the STEM program at some of the schools? Huge. We're all talking about a shortage of skills and people. The whole idea behind the STEM program is to start developing skills in our youth that will make them more employable. Help us fill the need for the people that we need. And Gary is very active in that. And he's been very, very influential in getting that program and growing that and spreading the knowledge of what that does. He's also the president of the, let's see if I get this right, the IT Council of North Dakota. And he's going to talk a little bit about what they're doing today when he comes up here with that council. But without any farther ado, we're going to start early, and then we're going to have a break after this, so be patient. I see people are filling their coffee. But I would like to bring up to the stage now the President of Technology at Bell State Bank, Gary Inman.
Guess I should have been walking up here sooner.
That's all right. It's long.
It is. All right. Boy, it is blinding up here. So I'm probably more of a walker, so we'll to the camera guy here. But thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here today, and certainly, hopefully, the weather holds out for us all. Thanks for the introduction, Brad. We spend a lot of time at Starbucks. Is typically when Brad and I are talking, and you would think he'd be sick of hearing me talk about STEM. But so this won't be a STEM, although I do have one slide in there that will get us a little bit of that. But what I want to talk to you today is more about in my role as president of the IT Council, that trade group of about 100 companies from around the state, always looking for more members. I guess we'll make that pitch as long as we're up here. And really, something that's been called the Dakota Fiber Initiative is, I guess, not that you can really see the hands. How many people were at the Senator Hoeven's State of Technology conference earlier this year? You really do have to do that. So a few, and I actually know that a couple of you were at our more formal kickoff of the Dakota Fiber Initiative. But from that August event with Doug Burgum on stage, and then what we've been working on the last 3 months or so, Doug put a vision out there. I'm going to give you a little bit of the background, so for those of you who weren't there, but really about this vision of could North Dakota be and should North Dakota be the most wired state in the union, and just trying to kind of take advantage of a few different situations that we have here in the state today. So what we'll be talking about today is going through some of the different pieces of this and really talking about the opportunity and some of the different things about where we think this can go. So kind of a quick little agenda. So again, from an overview standpoint, at the session in August, Doug Burgum kind of went through a bit of kind of the current state of the economic climate and just kind of a lot of different things about that. So I have a few of his slides here that we'll go through relatively quickly, but I want to kind of set the stage as he set the stage in getting to kind of the real heart of this topic. And using a few different sets of economic indicators, Doug kind of went through and started talking about what is North Dakota. I mean, again, none of this is terribly, I think, new to most people out there. I mean, certainly we know that we're in an area that is doing well, relative to the rest of the nation, and a lot of different things. But again, I think some of these numbers, I don't know if you really necessarily understand them until you really kind of see them in print and really start to think through, what is the growth that we've seen. And certainly there's all kinds of talk of the West and the oil and everything that kind of goes out, on out there. A lot of this is maybe a little bit tangential to that. That's going on, but certainly, as we're all aware, there's a considerable amount of tech growth as well. And I think what we start to see is some of that in some of these different numbers. Again, oil a big driver, but technology certainly as well. So again, to look at some of the different numbers out there, just for a lot of the jobs, a lot of the things, and actually what you'll see here, and when we kind of get into this is why we get so excited with the STEM types of opportunities and some of the different things that go on in that, but also then just I think this opportunity we have with looking at our network. So again, not to redo his entire speech, but Doug kind of used this as the framework for his discussion, kind of throughout in these kind of 5 pillars of innovation, and he kind of went through and graded the state in all these different areas. Again, I'd encourage you to seek that out more from a different channel. Again, I'm not going to be trying to recreate his entire speech here, but really what it boiled down to in looking at all the different pillars here and everything that this includes is that between the business climate, the capital, and the workforce, and all kinds of different things, there really is an opportune moment for us to try to take advantage of the combination of all these different pieces to really find some way, innovative ways to work, and how do we then build on that for our growth for the coming years. So, hitting on a couple of those different points, and one that, well, again, in the whole STEM thing, and for those of you who know me, you probably can't get through too many conversations without getting there. This in that workforce area is something that we are very passionate about, both myself individually, but also the IT Council. So in this view of great people and not enough of them, one of the initiatives that the IT Council has had over the last really 6 years is something that we call the IT Career Awareness Program. And just this idea of being that, from the IT Council standpoint, looking at a lot of the issues that we've been tracking from all of our organizations and our member companies, and looking at the state, is getting enough of the right people to be able to hire. Living here in North Dakota that can come work for our member companies has historically, again, I assume you all have similar types of challenges in this, but we've been doing research in this space for the last 5-6 years and trying to find a few different methods to be able to work towards a solution to this problem, or at least to reduce the amount of problem. I'm quite confident we don't have a solution to this yet, but if you look at those numbers, 20,000 open positions throughout the state. And really, when we start to look at the IT numbers of positions, it represents easily half that number. And we, just through our member companies, which about 100 companies, when we really try to do that, at any given point, we see hundreds of open positions just from those 100 companies. And then we kind of go and do some further look in those that are called in the IT industry. So those companies that have specifically stated that our primary purpose is IT or technology related industry. So it is many of you today, but it's carriers, it's Network Center itself, other different providers along those lines, software companies, et cetera. They then, we kind of look to see, as we try to look out 6-8 years, it looks to be about 15,000 positions just in those companies that say they're IT companies. Then you start adding in healthcare and finance and agriculture and all the other different companies out there, and this number definitely explodes in the coming years. So a lot of the different items that we look at, and I'll say it's for another speech, not really what we will get into right now, is looking for these opportunities to drive the point home to the young people throughout our state, and a lot of different things that we do to say, take the right, science, math, et cetera, all those STEM types of courses, go through the university systems here, and make sure that you're graduating with those degrees. But then it's on all of us to make sure that we are providing the right internship opportunities or other different ways that they can engage in and understand the technology that does exist throughout the state here today and what we see going forward, but to make sure that they understand that they can have a high-tech career right here in their own backyard, or in a lot of cases that it's work your technology job during the day, farm the family land, evening, weekends, et cetera. Sounds great, there's your 90, 100-hour work week, but that you can really stay right in your hometown, right down the street, work in a great technology career without having to go to either coast or leave the area. But because again, a lot of it comes down to is if there's this many jobs needed here right now, it's only going to grow. How do we make sure that we build that workforce? Because I think today will be one of those spotlight days that says this is why not many people are going to move in, and certainly makes it a harder recruiting challenge to bring people to the state. So we always want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to grow our technology talent and to really encourage those STEM types of careers. I won't say that's the last I'm going to cover that today, but that's the last of the prepared version that I will cover here today. Certain other things that in Doug going through his presentation, kind of gave this as an example, as kind of part of the build is, in 1964, storage space, generally, certainly wasn't always measured in gig, but if you look at kind of the cost of what storage would have been in 1964, you see the number down there, probably about $3.6 million for 1 gig. And then you kind of look to the right and you say, here are the cheap little USB drives that you can get at any checkout stand or anywhere else, probably 4 gig for $10. So certainly quite a change over the last 50 years of watching that grow. And again, as all of you know, as the data stored matches the at least the storage that you have on hand. So just this constant increase in need for storage, but watching the cost of that storage decrease over that same time as well. Another similar story, kind of looking back 13 years from a cell phone subscription standpoint, about 720 million or so in 2000. You can kind of see the density there. To now, in 2013, 5.9 billion or 6 billion cell phones throughout the world. Again, just this astronomical growth that we see as soon as technology really gets identified, understood, built for the masses. We definitely can watch the trajectories go quite high when we are doing that. Something that I guess in one of my past lives I've spent a lot of time with is currently 10 billion internet connections, going to 50 in the Internet of Things and some other different ideas that are out there, and just trying to figure out that in say a building like this, that every light switch and every device, every light itself, HVAC, et cetera, just in things like building automation, the amount of data that a building like this could be generating over time is enormous. Now you start to apply that to the other different industries, healthcare and all the different pieces that are being tracked there. We're going to talk a little more about agriculture and some other different items in that, here a bit later in the presentation. Just this idea that we can see this coming. You can, talk big data, talk all the different things that are out there now, but we are just starting to kind of see the beginnings of the amount of data that's going to be spreading in the coming years. So Doug generally kind of ended his portion of the presentation with this goal, and kind of talking about the fact that with where North Dakota is today, through public and private partnership, how would we implement the highest speed and greatest bandwidth infrastructure in the world? So kind of a big goal out there. 2 years out, so quite a challenge from a time frame, but really just trying to put that big bold goal out there to say, is this something feasible? Is this something that we can accomplish here? And if so, how would we go about doing that? So I know as soon as I kind of started seeing where this was going, I kind of picked out my couple carriers that I knew who were in the room, and interesting to watch their reaction as a statement like this is made in the room. But it actually kind of started to kind of get a little bit of a groundswell even that day. I didn't leave that building that day without really kind of understanding that the Dakota Fiber Initiative, as it kind of quickly became called, really started turning into a bit of a, had a little momentum around it before we even left the room that day. And we've then trying to build on top of that momentum, trying to say, what is the right message, what is the right type of goal that this is, and who and how would we go ahead and try to pull this off, and what possibilities could we have. We will talk here in a little bit about the only thing. So this is the untouched version of what Doug put in the room. I think as we've been going through the last few months, about the only change that we're specifically probably looking to change, although we haven't made it kind of officially yet, is somewhere in there adding the word affordable. So because it really is no question, you can go build the biggest and the best and the highest bandwidth, et cetera, if you want to pay for it, if you want to kind of put it out there, and you can do a lot of this today. But I think to really kind of match up, again, as we talk about how this all comes together, there's going to need to be a word of affordable. You may start throwing in affordable, available, et cetera. A lot of the other ilities start to come into just the idea that it's the that it's the greatest. You know, it kind of starts to assume that you've got the availability, you've got the redundancy, and a lot of the other different things that that would go into you know, making a statement like this. But that affordable piece is what we, you know, tend to start to come back to, and just trying to make sure that we find a good balance of the two. So to talk a little bit about, again, before we kind of get into how we, you know, where this goes and what we do with this, you know, kind of how did the IT Council get involved? Certainly there's a lot of different players that need to come together to achieve a vision, you know, such as been laid out there. As the first couple meetings happened in the couple weeks after that August session, what really kind of started to come out is that somebody needed to be a champion of this. Some entity needed to try to pick this up and figure out what it really, you know, kind of could be, should be, and how would we go about tackling the problem. So this actually kind of fits, you know, well with the IT Council in that a couple of our normal goals that we track for throughout any of the legislative sessions and everything that we've been, you know, doing over the last several years is that infrastructure development is actually a specific goal of ours, making sure that the North Dakota, you know, tax, legal, et cetera, environments are suited for this type of initiative, or, you know, that lets companies invest, lets them invest easily, and, you know, kind of make them want to invest in the state and innovate on the different things that they have. We also have statewide, you know, we're a statewide entity. Our 100 companies, you know, come from all around the state, and we have members that are both on the supply side, or the carriers and other different folks who would provide this type of technology, but also, you know, what we've generally been calling the demand side. You know, again, probably more about, you know, folks like yourselves, is who would use all this bandwidth if we really were able to get it to strung up in that way, and trying to then find, you know, how do we tie this all together. One thing that we typically find when we hit an initiative like this from an IT Council standpoint, because we have representation and membership from both sides of this, there's a lot of times we can't engage or choose not to engage in this as a problem because we may, you know, kind of represent, you know, kind of the wrong side, or, you know, we want to make sure that we're representing our membership, you know, well. So a lot of times we can't take a strong pro or anti position on some of these things without, you know, potentially some group of our members being on the wrong side of this. I think what we've kind of found in this one is this is one of those rising tide floats all boats types of projects that everybody can get around this concept. You know, the carriers certainly are, you know, have a position, and we'll talk a little about that here, but certainly on the demand side, you know, it's everybody can come together if we can find the right way to be able to accomplish something like this. So in a meeting a little over a month ago, the IT Council board has approved this, and so we've kind of picked this up as an initiative that we are working to run. So to talk a little bit about, you know, kind of where we are today, and you know, really trying to figure out, is this a thing? Is this really a need? Is there really an opportunity? You know, if so, what is it? To pull just a couple simple stats, these are, you know, not perfectly representative of everything that's out there, but, you know, just some different data, you know, that we pull from Ookla, the people behind speedtest.net, and a couple of those different sites. You know, from a download speed, you know, generally North Dakota, middle of the pack. You know, these are, again, kind of on average across the state for all the different people that have gone to speedtest.net. You know, and this is where we're at. And I had a Montana conversation. Sorry, guys. You know, we'll work on that one too. There's kind of a side conversation. There's something similar going on in Montana that I think we have to find a way to see if or how we can work together on that. But again, to kind of look at this, you know, upload always harder than download in a lot of these cases. But you know, now we kind of drop to maybe more the bottom third. You know, not quite as good of a story. And then, you know, to kind of look at a value index, and this number kind of comes into play a little bit later. As you can see, generally across the state, actually doing, you know, reasonably well to average to the national average. But then to look at Fargo. Actually, these numbers pulled before the Mid-Continent and a couple of other announcements that are out there. But you know, certainly Fargo has a bit of a value problem in that, and I think, you know, some of the Mid-Continent, some of the other different things that will happen out there will start to have an impact on some of that. But but again, taking some of the basic types of numbers out there, you can start to see, just a little bit of, we are out there, middle of the pack, generally, kind of okay in terms of some of these numbers, but certainly I think some room for opportunity there to be able to increase in different things like this, and to help us, build for some of those other opportunities that may be out there from an economic impact and other types of pieces here. Again, this is a lot of kind of getting a lot of different things out there before we, as some data points before we kind of get into a couple different examples of things that we could be talking about. Many of you may be thinking, well, hey, isn't this already done? Isn't this something like a Google Fiber? And certainly I think along that lines, I think they're going to be a good barometer for us to be able to look to see, what they've done and how they've done it in their particular scale. So what happened is kind of this person from Google, this article kind of came out right at the time we were getting to do our kickoff, and I think it's actually very telling for where we're at, and to hit on a couple of the challenges that we think that we would run into. Is so again, kind of this comment, there's a myth that consumers don't want or won't pay for, don't need the high-speed broadband, and really what Google's going on to say is that certainly that's not true, or at least not the experience that they've had in their Kansas City trials that they have. A couple differences just to kind of make sure that we lay it out there is Google in general has been going for residential only, or that's been their primary focus. Which actually has kind of led into, because they're not having a business focus, what they found is different hacker houses have been kind of set up in some of these residential neighborhoods. So people have come in, purchased homes that can be on the Google Fiber backbone, and basically rented out to startups, to innovators, to other different people, and it actually has turned into some of these homes getting dozens of people in there, in more of a business type of type of a space. Kind of look at them, it's a lot of people on couches and such still, kind of set up in those areas, but it actually has had a, and I think the jury is out a little bit, a positive and negative impact on the environment, on the neighborhoods in those cases. Certainly has raised home prices in some of these areas because there's been more and more people coming in and buying these houses, but certainly it's not residential use in those areas. So I think there's still a little bit that's being kind of sorted out in some of those. But again, basically their basic point is that when it's built, people definitely have a desire, have a need, and try to get out there and use it. Little sense of what they've done. Again, just a couple different data points. They have 3 primary packages that they have. So kind of typically gigabit to the home is what they're doing. So for $120 a month, you're getting a gig speed to your house, plus they become your TV provider as well. You can see generally they've put a $300 connection fee, waived if you're going into that. To get just the gig internet alone is $70 a month. Again, that fee waived. They've also done, because they're Google and they can kind of get some of this back in ads and other different things that you get in this service, they actually have a free internet service where you can get on the same service. You do pay the $300 construction fee for them, and it's definitely ad subsidized as well. But just in terms of making sure that it is available to everybody, they do have an option that anyone can take advantage of. What's interesting in what they're talking about as some of their biggest challenges as they've done this, because again, that's what we're in this mode of trying to understand, what would stop this, or what are the different opportunities or changes we may need to make. Their biggest thing has been, how do we make it easier to let the carriers, let these folks come in and build out the infrastructure. So, getting access to power poles, ducts, everything throughout the city, throughout the city type of infrastructure, to be able to do their build out in an easier way. They need to know that it's not locked down, that it is possible that different carriers are going to have access to everything that they may need. Also, providing good maps. So again, is where what is in the ground already. What do we have to build around to be able to put the fiber into the ground? They really want to make sure that they can get at and understand those maps in a good way. And what I find is interesting is the last one is expediting the construction permits. They're doing, in a case like Kansas City, they've done tens of thousands of permits. And basically the city has had to staff up their permitting office in a considerable way. And so it's just kind of one of those unintentional consequences or something that you have to think about that it probably didn't dawn on them when they started that was going to be one of the things that held them back the most, but then finding some different ways to be able to supplement that that type of resource becomes another idea of different things of how do you make an opportunity like this work. Well, if we're helping carriers put more fiber in the ground, we also have to look and see what's on the other end, and does some of this assistance that we need to start looking at come in the way of what do we need to do to beef up city offices and other different entities that might be certainly directly involved in being able to pull this off, but not some of the obvious choices or obvious things that you would think of that need to be beefed up to be able to implement something like this. So a little bit of what we get into, and this is kind of the part of so with that as a little bit of the background, trying to talk about what is this opportunity, what are the different things out there, very simplistic data. Our next step right now is definitely about how do we understand this opportunity, this situation in a far, far better way. So we'll talk about briefly here in a minute some of the different things that we think we need to do, but there's a supply side story and a demand side story that we're trying to get into focus right now. So from the supply side, the carriers today, and we're very much kind of with them on this, is that carriers today are basically saying, hey, we have a significant amount of bandwidth in the state, fiber in the ground, and we're ahead of where we need to be today. And actually, in general, we're very much with them. That is exactly right. The number that I've heard is something like 40,000 miles of fiber already in the ground today. Multiple counties throughout the state that are 100% fiber to every farm, every house, everywhere in those counties. There are some great examples of where this type of situation is already in place, and people are taking advantage of it, and I think it becomes a great kind of test bed to look to say, how do we what does this look like? What does it take to be able to accomplish this? And how do we ensure that then we can broaden that beyond the couple counties that are 100% and say, is that a model, or are there different ways that we can take that to the entire state? And so making sure that we find a way to work with the carriers, to work with the different things, to understand what's in the ground today, what are our capabilities with that, through, again, both what's already been buried today and the equipment upgrades that they're going to be able to do with what they have today, to be able to expand and provide a significant amount of bandwidth for years to come. So again, I think right now there's a great story to be told of where the state is today, and where we're going to get to for the not too distant future here. What the side of the story that is starting to come more into view and becomes a little more difficult to be able to understand and pinpoint numbers is on that demand side. How many people out there today know exactly how much bandwidth you're going to need now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, in your industries and in for your companies? And I would basically challenge you is that I think when looking back at some of the cell phone numbers and some of the other different things that are out there, it is difficult to predict what you will use and what the next kind of inflection point might be in your industry or other different things that are going to drive your usage. So certainly we know things like video conference and lots of different things that kind of come to video, which is can be a pretty big user of bandwidth. Is certainly growing, I think, for most people. A story I want to tell here is we've been talking a lot. I spent a little time yesterday with the North Dakota Corn Growers Association, and really talking about what are the agriculture industry needs for data that something like this initiative would really have an impact on. And what we got to talking about is, and again, probably quite a few people out here who are familiar, but with a lot of the advancements in ag technology, as the new equipment is putting literally seeds in the ground, there are 20-some significant number of data points, literally about every individual seed in the ground. Geo coordinates, temperature, date planted, all kinds of different things that kind of go into understanding that individual seed. Now multiply that times the millions or billions of seeds that are in the ground, and farm entities are starting to generate significant amounts of data just about the time of planting. Now they come back and apply fertilizer, go through the different pieces that needs to overlay certain data on top of that. They're now talking about, we want to do UAV flyovers for some of the mapping, and there's some infrared and other types of imaging that they're doing that they also want to lay over top of that data. So any individual farm, for its millions of seeds that it has in the ground, other different layers that it gets to, can start to generate gigs, if not terabytes of data, just from some of those individual fields, that's basically in the middle of the state, not near some of the concentrated centers where we would typically think of our highest bandwidth. Lots of different things that generate data, and trying to understand what does that demand look like? What are the next things that are going to generate data in a way that would be similar to that? You now start layering on large dairy and other types of livestock types of farms, and they're going to be tracking all that individual data about each cow, each whatever on their line, how much feed, how much whatever that went into the production of that. Again, just all these different items that start to generate massive amounts of data just in the agriculture space. Now there's the clinic down the road, the bank that might be there, the video, everybody wants to watch Netflix. It was talked about this is, so there's farmers out there, are they also watching Netflix in the cab of their tractor? Yeah, they probably are. At least I know my nephews and brother and sister do. But so all the different things that kind of come into play, both from the industry and the personal use, that is only going to increase, and again, watch that bandwidth usage go up on a pretty major trajectory. So where we're going with this, kind of from this point, is our view is trying to tie this into three major phases of the project. First, in phase one is the word feasibility is really probably the biggest key word up there. Is this something? Is this really an initiative that needs to happen? That there are opportunities, and if so, what are they? How do we document all of that and come up with the right picture both of supply and demand, and then try to say, how do we implement this in a good way from a pilot standpoint? So, a couple different things that we have up there is we've been meeting with a lot of different folks, trying to look at what would the concept of a downtown Fargo pilot be, more of that urban type of a pilot, to say, is there something that we can really look at to say, how do we saturate an urban area in much the same way we have a couple counties in the rural areas that have this 100% coverage? What would an urban pilot look like? And really, what that goes to is trying to start with this supply and demand stories. So the very first thing that we go to do are these assessments, and really trying to look at, and the carriers have generally agreed. We certainly don't have all the lawyers on board and everything there, but the carriers, in coming together today, have basically said they would be very supportive of providing all of their data privately. Another kind of role of how the IT Council comes into play, to draw a map of what is the current state of fiber, of lit buildings, or a couple different ways we may look at that throughout the whole state. And so really trying to make sure, can we go get that great and tell that full and complete story of the supply side, as it sits today. And really, again, just trying to get a way that keeps their data safe. It's proprietary, and we don't want to get that out, kind of too far. I mean, it's their bread and butter type of data. But being able to try to tell that story and understand the full story of how close are we, or how far away are we, or whatever that the data kind of comes back to say. Secondly, is that demand side. Again, working with people like the corn growers and other different folks. healthcare, finance, et cetera, all the different industries that we can get to try to understand those drivers and try to get, at least a bit of a thumbnail sketch of what does that demand look like for us, or what are the areas that we would need to focus on, and turn that then into a bit of an economic impact study. If we, I don't think, nobody's really going into saying if we build it, they will come, but certainly there is that view of what does it look like if we have it? What are the barriers that we are able to break down, and how could we accomplish this? We then kind of start to roll into that implementation plan for Fargo, and then try to, with all that data, trying to pull that all together, we then can really figure out what phase 2, phase 3 kind of really could or should be. We have a view of then kind of just kind of from a center radiating out, but then also trying to look at what is that statewide feasibility, or what's the need. So all this is really trying to go to try to figure out how do we help. If this is a thing, if this is something that really can provide great impact, great possibilities for the state, what does help, or what does this initiative look like? To be very clear, this is not at all a view of the state should create its own network, or somehow so the state should own this bandwidth, anything like that. Definitely not at all the case. But trying to look then, are there, how do we help the carriers? How do we help supply and demand sides? Carriers build out everything and stay well ahead of where consumption would be, but also demand to understand what are those drivers and how do we kind of help marry that. So we look at different ideas of, it could be tax credits for carriers as they put fiber into the ground, that you get access to money that helps that process go either faster, or keeps cost relatively down, because we know that those costs get passed on to the demand side, to be able to have that, and trying to find that balance, but trying to make it easier for both sides. Could also be a demand side, or a usage type of tax break that again, the carriers are still going to get what they'd want. To the consumer, it could be a lower price in that they're paying less taxes. So few different ways, and there's a few other different ideas. And actually, I didn't plant the questions that I said I was going to, and I should have. But that's actually one kind of a discussion point. There's a couple microphones out here that, as I kind of rolling to the end here, be thinking about is, I'd like to kind of understand your questions, your comments, or your challenges for what I've said, and see if there are any comments from the group here. Because the last bit that I have is, so how do we do this? What are we doing? There is a bit of an ask as we go out and talk to some of these different companies. Is the IT Council? We're a trade group. We have our different initiatives that we work on. We're running this as a separate kind of a side committee that needs to be fully funded to be able to really progress. We don't have a ton of money laying around to be able to do a couple of these feasibility studies. But so we're now engaging with interested parties to be able to go through and perform some of these different assessments and studies. We think in general it takes about $75,000 to do, so you can kind of see the breakout there from drawing the map, doing the economic impact study, and all the other different things of just trying to be able to pull this together with the staffing and that required. I've been told that, and we haven't quite proven it out yet, that we're way too high, that we should be able to do this for considerably cheaper. I honestly hope that to be the case. So far we haven't found that to be the case as we kind of talk through with the different vendors that would be involved to help us out. But so right now what we're basically looking for is pledges. The initiative will not go forward until we're fully funded. So we're looking for pledges up to about the $75,000 mark. Today we're sitting at $35,000. I've got a couple soft ones in there that probably take us a little bit higher. So we're about halfway to the desired pledge amount to be able to move forward. That then we can kind of go take the next step and really try to put, for all the different kind of things of I don't know and all the different things I've set up here, really trying to get data and information that we can use to be able to take this to the next logical steps that would go with an initiative like this. So I can't miss this opportunity from stage is certainly if there is anybody out there interested, would like to talk more, certainly, well, I'll take your pledges today if you have them, but if you'd like to kind of talk more, get a little bit of understanding between myself and a few others, we'd be very, very open to coming to visit with you and talk through this. Because again, at this stage, we are still very much trying to understand and build out what could or should this be. Again, start with data, but if there are some different ideas of different areas that we could be pursuing right away, we're very, very open to those different ideas. I always know I talk fast, so kind of to a point of discussion, and again, I apologize, I should have planted a few questions, but are there any questions? Are there any comments? Anybody have any different things that they'd like to at least kind of have us discuss or kind of put out there? I don't know, is that Brad heading to a microphone? Good work.
I always have something to say, Gary.
I know that.
So I do have a quick question. You didn't plant this one, but we have people from small retail, large retail, healthcare, manufacturing. This is your chance. Paint utopia. What does this mean? So obviously, if we have more bandwidth, my daughter's going to love it. She's going to get faster internet, all that good stuff. But if we go ahead of the curve, what's the competitive advantage? What does it mean to some of the people in this room if this happens?
So I was having this conversation, thank you for the question. So I was having this conversation with folks from the EDC actually just the other day, because they're basically saying to me, Gary, we've in 1% of companies that are looking to come into the state, are they saying they don't have enough bandwidth for what they need? And actually we very much agree that today, where we sit right now today, this is not probably the biggest issue that we have. Again, I think it's part of the message from the supply side is that there is a significant amount of bandwidth, and most people have everything that they need. What we're trying to kind of talk about is the 5-10 years out, so that kind of to where Brad is going with that is that then any type of industry, any type of innovation that you may want to do, you can do right here. So in a few of the different examples that we've had, the corn growers and that type of thing, there's a whole view of that in a few years back we actually kind of had tried to do through the EDC something that we called the Embedded Systems Institute, but just this view of how do you piece together private industry, NDSU, where the state and other different people may come in, other industry people from around the world, and say, is there a way to tie all this together in North Dakota where you really provide for the kids, it's an opportunity to have great tech jobs right here. For the industry, NDSU may create a new embedded systems, or in this case, an agriculture data related degree or certificate, where this becomes kind of the hotbed or the center of all of the innovation in a few of these different areas, really providing a great kind of economic story to say it can all come here. You tie in the UAV to the corn growers, tie in the UAV studies and that going on in Grand Forks, and you really get to start to layer in all kinds of different ideas, all kinds of different industries and areas that all are going to need this type of data, and it's available right here very easily to everyone. And there's a few different stories of watching this growth go, and to say I'm not even sure what the next big driver of data is going to be. We have some ideas. Again, you can throw data in our video and a few of these other kind of specific scenarios. But I think the real key here is that with it being there, people aren't going to be limited to what they have today, and we may just see the innovation go. And I think that's the real opportunity, is just hopefully it's unbridled innovation that can then result from not being hamstrung by bandwidth limitations that they may have, or that they may build themselves into for where they would want to go. Other questions? Oh, somebody?
Yeah. Hi, Brett Anderson. Say, this reminds me, and I know, Gary, you're familiar with it, and a few other people in the room are too, of a speech that was given 15 years ago, roughly. Doug Burgum talked about, he related the the drive behind small towns 150 years ago getting online with the railroads. So when the railroads were building out, the small towns realized this is our opportunity to secure our future. If we get a railroad to come through, we get an elevator put up, this is going to secure us, as opposed to being one of those towns that maybe turns into a ghost town or doesn't last very long. And I think this is another example of that we saw 150 years ago, the power of the internet and getting online with it and having good bandwidth, having good infrastructure, having good access, having low costs. This can drive future growth for us. So I think just calling that up, and I'm sure, Gary, you recall that speech that Doug had given, and it's interesting to look at it now. 15 years ago, it was just talking about get internet in your business. Now we're talking about improve it across the state, because that's what's going to give us sort of the future, and it's going to give us opportunity that maybe some other states or big cities aren't considering. It's one of those things I think everybody needs to think about and get behind, because it's important for long-term for North Dakota's success. So just a comment.
Absolutely. Nope, that's great. And actually, at the August event, Doug actually used a very similar, you kind of talked about that as well, as kind of part of why Fargo is this was the lowest point of the river, and that's where the railroad could more easily kind of go through. So it certainly does have an impact and does have a very similar type of story to that. Yes.
Also worth noting from an EDA perspective, when you look at a state like California, which is the 7th largest economy in the world, the tax man's coming, okay? And so where they're gonna focus on are tech companies in the Silicon Valley, organizations like Oracle, Facebook, folks that make some pretty outstanding figures. And so what's interesting is those leaders are looking at getting their equipment stacks out of the state. They want to keep their people there because it's fun, it's hip, it's great to work with colleges and have wonderful labor force. Where North Dakota is sitting, 3% unemployment. However, it has some phenomenal opportunities to pull some of the equipment stacks or some of those initiatives from other states.
Right, absolutely. And really, when a couple of us kind of get going on this and kind of saying, what are the different ways that this could be? We've talked about some different examples. Is what if we can get Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, et cetera, to build a data center here much in that way, try to take advantage of, so when we really get going, it's the, how much natural gas is being flared off in Western North Dakota. Can that power some of those data centers? How do we kind of do that? But then, trying to build up so that we know that there is, also the aggregate bandwidth needed in and out of the state that would drive, be driven by one of those data centers, kind of coming in and being an anchor point to a lot of what we're talking about here as well. So certainly there's a few different ways that this kind of plays out that both gets it to the very local, to every house, every building, et cetera, but then it needs to be able to scale up to make sure that we also can get out to the rest of the world. And there's so a lot of different levels, a lot of different ways that this starts to play to be able to really kind of get done. I think probably, I don't know how we're doing on time here, but there's one more.
There's plenty of time, Gary.
All right.
So seriously, guys, anybody have questions? I'll actually bring the mic to you, so you don't have to
there you
get
go.
out.
What service? Really is bright. Is there one? All right.
So it doesn't sound like there's a supply side issue. I think I've heard that a couple times now. Currently, even though maybe 10 years down the line, we know. So on the demand side, you gave the Google prices for what they're doing today. To increase the demand side, do you see this being a cost-benefit structure for end users, or I know that's part of the assessment, but I guess that's the part I'm missing. That if there's bandwidth available today, well, what's the need? So does the cost structure change?
Well, I think we need to look at all of that. In none of this are we saying we are expecting free bandwidth or anything else like that, and we also do not want to cut the legs out from underneath the carriers or anything like that. They have a business. We want to make sure that they're able to do that, to manage and maintain their businesses effectively as well. I think the way I talk about that and the way that we're kind of looking at this is, in general, think of your cell phone, think of, even the internet access that you've had at home probably for the last, 10, 15 years, is you've arguably kind of gotten to a particular price point that, that you've been paying. I know my cell phone bill over the last however many years hasn't really changed in any appreciable way, but during that time I've moved from well, basically no data to to 3G to 4G, added text, added different items, that the value in that has basically gone up significantly, even though I'm paying roughly the same amount that I always have. We kind of look at this as potentially something similar, that if we can help make sure that that the carrier's ability to provide the growth that we need in a good cost-effective way, either through, again, trying to find the different ways that it could happen, if it's about some of the different things that that the Google folks mentioned there, of just making it easier for them to do trenching, that they know they have the good maps and they have access, and some of the other different infrastructure doesn't get in the way, that there could be tax credits as they go in. And I think that's one way that helps keep their cost low, to help and make sure that they want to invest in a good way. But also on the demand side, what are the different things that that drive that say, are there different ways that we may be able to make that that value proposition stay reasonably similar, and that could come in. Again, this is back to this looking at do we have an opportunity in North Dakota today, kind of where with our current economic structure, that says maybe some of the taxes and other different things that you pay for usage go down, that allowing the same or a similar amount to be able to go to carriers to keep them doing what they're doing, but it makes the cost to the end user a bit less in that way, taking advantage of kind of more of a current situation. So trying to find out what are the right dials, and they're probably on both sides of this equation, that keep that value there for everybody involved. Again, not trying to say this needs to be free. Again, we're certainly not saying that this needs to be kind of state run, state owned, anything like that may get into some of the other different ways. But again, trying to understand what are the dials that actually even make sense, that can work to keep that value. Again, back to that affordable, being able to be tied to all this. But that we find that right mix of just what this initiative kind of can and should be. I don't know if it's at the 10th time I've said that line too, but that's really the stage where we're at.
Gary,
right now.
didn't Google explore that demand side as well with their pilot project, and it was amazing what came after the fact once it was built?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think there is a little bit of truth of the if you build it, they will come. But again, I think what it really boils down to is certainly there is only going to be more and more demand for bandwidth, and so really trying to say, if we can remove a couple of the barriers that just gets it there easier and more effectively for both sides, then I think we can build on that. Because again, I think you made the point, and it's been made here today, is that this is not at all we don't have adequate bandwidth today, and I think for some amount of foreseeable future, this is ensuring that how do we stay well ahead of that game and try to be able to figure out the right way to be able to finance that growth and do that. But having been an IT manager for a lot of different years, it's never been a case where I haven't been able to get the bandwidth that I need at that time. A couple of times I may not be able to get it at that particular location, or maybe for a price that I would prefer to pay. So I think there's always that type of a situation that's going to be out there. So we want to make sure that we are always looking at ways that we can ensure that it's there, it's at a good and fair price for both sides of the equation, and that we know we can grow the way we would like to be able to grow, and kind of ride that rocket ship up of innovation and the different things that are out there. And again, I think in general for this is, so from an IT council standpoint, as we look at everything that we do, we still believe that our bigger challenge is going to be workforce for years and years to come. Finding enough people to be able to do that innovation and use all this great bandwidth. But there are some other barriers. Again, I think that looking at the Google Fiber and some of that is, people do tend to get drawn to that. And so if we have some other different things, it may help turn other dials as well. But again, I think workforce is going to be a big issue, because again, in this is, I have what I need, or I can buy what I need today. How do we keep ourselves in, to be able to always say that statement is true? Yep.
So you're looking at this forward-looking, right? Are you, during your feasibility, you can look at commercial, residentially, residential connections differently because of the technologies coming from wireless, things of that nature for residential purposes versus commercial purposes?
So the question is basically, as we're looking forward, will we look at residential and commercial potentially differently, or just some of the different needs? I think, the short and easy answer from stage right now is, yes. What that exactly means, I don't know, but because again, we talk a lot about, kind of fiber to the home and fiber to every building. But what about wireless, and certainly bringing in the North Dakota corn growers? We're not going to have a fiber to that tractor driving down the field, and so there are definitely still many of the same last mile types of problems and other different things that need to be viewed in this. To date, trying to get this to get somewhat off the ground, we've generally been focused on fiber to buildings, but certainly we definitely understand that there are wireless and other different opportunities that are going to have to be explored to be able to really take advantage of this the way that we can or should do that. So I don't have an answer perfect of it. Oh, and here's exactly what we're going to go do, but we certainly are keeping that out there and open as something that must be explored to really get the value for what we're talking about.
Gary? Oh, go ahead.
I have a quasi-political question. So, Fargo being the largest metro area in North Dakota doesn't address the other side of the river. What are you going to do about Moorhead?
So the question is Fargo being in North Dakota and Moorhead being in Minnesota, what do we do? Again, not perfectly sure. Again, I think that's why we're trying to engage different groups like the Economic Development Council, the Chamber, and other different groups that will keep us focused on kind of the metro as a whole. We've called this the Dakota Fiber Initiative, but certainly I think when it really comes time to figure out what are the exact steps that we would do, that will have to be looked at. But here again, I don't really have that particular answer. We are actually meeting with the Legislative IT Interim Committee on actually a week from today, next Tuesday, to kind of begin the conversation with legislators to understand what or how this could be accessible to them, or just how we should be thinking about the different things that the other side of your question is Fargo being there's the Fargo and the rest of state. Kind of the, so you talked about going east. There's actually definitely a set of questions about, going west as well, and trying to look at all of that. And so, just trying to make sure, again, back to IT Council's involvement, is we are a statewide entity, and we do try to make sure that we think about how this plays across the entire state, across all of our members, and to really understand every bit of that. So, don't have that answer today, but certainly the studies and other different things will have to play that out.
Hey, Gary.
Ben.
Ben Corman from IBM. Say, quick question. When you talk about the current data providers in the area and across the state, how do they play into this? How do they tap into it? Are they being a part of the advisory council? How does that work?
Very much so. So actually, so one of the first meetings that happened, kind of within the first few weeks after, is several carriers, probably about 10 different carriers. I see a couple of them in the room here. Kind of came together to have this conversation and to really kind of make sure that their position is known as well. Actually, of the money that we have raised so far, a good half of that is actually from from certain carriers. So the first pledge I had was from one of the carriers. So certainly they're involved, and we need and want them involved. I mean, they are integral to being able to do this. And again, I think it's a view that we're very sensitive to, because again, historically, from an IT council standpoint, as I was saying earlier, is for these types of questions and for some of the different things that kind of go to that is we haven't always been able to take a position on certain ideas like this. And just the fact that they're engaged with some of the demand side as well really lets us, kind of make sure that we're telling the full and complete story, and we want to need their involvement in this, so that we're not, getting too far off of one way or the other. So it's actually been, right now we're sitting probably about 50-50 on that involvement, which is, to me, spectacular, because that gets us that supply-demand, side of the story. I assume, I guess we're officially coming to near the end of my other time, so I think I'm way over right now, but I guess are
Plenty
we?
of time, Gary.
Really,
Plenty
really?
of time.
Sorry, I did not get you, any of you
We've
out here
got him on
earlier.
the hot seat. Anybody else have questions for him?
I don't know that I've given any answers yet, but if you got questions. Hearing none, I think I will probably just drive to close then. So that's the initiative. That's the thought. As you can see, a lot of different room for ideas and thoughts and different things that we can do. I'm always open to your feedback, so feel free to find me. I'll be here throughout the day. Find me and let's have a conversation here. Reach out to me through the bank as well. Again, very happy to come talk about this and really kind of make sure that if you have ideas, thoughts, any ways that this kind of can and should move forward, this is definitely the time to get engaged in the initiative. So I want to thank you for your time. Am I throwing this to break or okay, Brad's coming back up. So with that, I guess I will close and thank you, and we'll look forward to talking to you throughout the day.
Thank you, Gary. That was great. Once again, Gary Inman, he's not just a technology leader, but he really is a regional, just a leader in general with the things that he's involved with. And I think that's what's most exciting about the initiative. And when he asked me about, could he use this as a platform? And I don't look at it as a platform. I mean, this would benefit all of us. I'm always looking for ways that, my kids are going to stay in town. Although last night, the way they acted, I was ready to, hopefully there is no jobs for her to stay here. But so no, that's great that we have that. And that's a great group that Gary's a part of too. So I really encourage you. Many of you out here are already very strong, heavily involved leaders in the technology community, but the group that Gary talked about is very important to drive innovation for us here in the Red River Valley. A couple of notes out of Gary's. Of course, I have to have a few comments. A few of them are smart. I'll keep them to myself. But one of them, the whole bandwidth idea, this adds it to a whole different perspective, because when we first talked about bandwidth, the only thing I could think of is how many times a day I hear people complaining about bandwidth. And our providers, we have a couple of great ones actually, but we'll throw them on the hot seat. I love to hear the calls from our support side when someone says, no, the provider's down. No, it's your IT's fault. And it's great to pick on them, but they really are. We do have bandwidth today that many of the other communities don't have. So this is over and above that, and I think that's what's fun to hear about, the time and effort they're putting into how this could really make us a better place. So, okay. A couple of quick things. We're going to go to break here in 1 minute. 11 o'clock, please be back in your seats. We have a great keynote at 11 o'clock. I'm not going to steal the thunder. We'll introduce that here in just a little while. So take a 15-minute break, catch up on your emails. The weather's still doing the same thing it was earlier today. It's cold and snowy, so it hasn't changed. And then we'll be back here at 11 o'clock sharp. So thank you, and let's move on to our break.